Hi there, Gerhard Bloom here, once again looking at the tyranny and the delusions of the social justice movement. So do you remember David Bowie's song, Heroes? You know, we could be heroes just for one day. What happened to heroes? Well, they got thoroughly undermined by the cynical leftists, right? Used to be young boys would look up to the police. Right? But now, of course, the police have been vilified as agents of oppression, right? They don't value black lives or black bodies, right? Of course, this is a lie. Roland Fryer, Ivy League professor, looked at the data, and blacks are no more likely to be shot and killed by the police than are whites under similar circumstances, right? So for controlling the relevant variables, blacks no more likely to be killed by the police than whites. In fact, less likely, right? Soldiers, you know, thousands and thousands of whom died on foreign fields or had limbs blown away defending freedom. But oh no, they're agents of imperialism and oppression. Perhaps you didn't know that historians call the period from the end of the Second World War to basically yesterday afternoon or before the Ukrainian invasion, the long peace. And even though there have been conflicts all over the world, there haven't been major conflagrations. And no, wars in Europe preceded the Second World War, which of course was preceded by the First World War. No, there were wars raging in Europe for centuries. In fact, historians look back in history, and up until very recently, war was the norm and peace the exception. Right? Who brought you that peace? American soldiers predominantly. And yes, I'm a retired Canadian soldier, proudly to have served, but the United States secured the peace and prosperity of the world since the Second World War, right? And it was not an easy job. They were indeed battling an evil empire, the Soviet Union. And you know, when Ronald Reagan called the Soviet Union an evil empire, that sounded like the language of a comic book. And then when the truth became widely known of the horrors that occurred within the Soviet Union and the monstrosities they were supporting across the globe, it became very clear that the Soviet Union was an evil empire. But now soldiers are vilified as agents of imperialism. Well, riddle me this. Japan was a colonialist, right? It had invaded and had an empire in Korea before the Second World War, and it invaded China and was brutal and authoritarian and murderous. And Germany, we know Germany's Second World War, slave labor, mass murder. The United States, this imperialist empire, it spent billions of dollars of its money rebuilding Japan and rebuilding Germany, and ensured that both countries had constitutions that were compatible with human freedom and dignity and rights. This is not what an evil empire or a colonial empire does, right? So absolute nonsense. And yet the United States is vilified and soldiers are no longer heroes. Well, they are to me, right? They are to me, and the police as well. You know, the thin blue line, shameful. But oh no. Now it's not heroes people want to emulate. People want to be victims, right? They want to find some protective cloak of some imaginary victim identity, right? So they can be special, they can be afforded special rights, they can be pitied. We've had several examples of this, right? Do you remember Rachel Dolezal? Rachel Dolezal was a university professor and a chapter president of the NAACP, right? The NAACP, the National Association for Colored People. Of course, you can't say colored people anymore, that's racist. But people of color is not racist. Tell me the actual difference here. Colored people, people of color, what's the difference here, really? But at any rate, she was a chapter president of the NAACP. The only problem is she was not black, and not even a little bit black. She just identified as being black. An alleged victim category, right? There's Elizabeth Warren, aka Pocahontas, right? Props to Donald Trump for that. Yeah, Pocahontas, no, not a Native American, right? Not a Native American, not even a little bit. Absolute nonsense, lie. And Hilaria Baldwin, no, she's not an oppressed Latina, right? No, she's not Latinx, not a Latino, no, not at all. She's as white bread as Wonder Bread, which, by the way, you shouldn't eat, right? You know, get a multigrain bread, do you better. But at any rate, none of the above are members of some alleged oppressed class. Now, why would anybody want to be a victim? Well, they don't actually want to be victim, because it turns out being a victim can lead you into very ugly places, right? Nobody actually wants to be a real victim. No, they want to be one of these pretend victims, right? Where you're coming out under one of these ridiculous gender categories, gender fluid, or non-binary, absolutely invented categories. But no, see, now you're bravely challenging the binary or patriarchal oppression. So you're some kind of hero, which costs you nothing and gains you favors. This is why people are pretending to be black so they can get into Harvard, right? And you know who's getting oppressed here? Asians are getting oppressed. But they're allegedly white adjacent, right? This is such a shameless, racist comment. No, Chinese people and Asian people are not emulating whites, right? China had a meritocratic bureaucracy hundreds of years before it happened in Europe. They value education and hard work. But now Harvard deliberately limits the number of Asians. Why? Because allegedly there's too many. There's too many. People are not cartons of eggs, white eggs, Asian eggs. No, people are individuals, and I don't know what the sacrifices each individual has made to get to Harvard. But black students are admitted into Harvard with grade point averages shockingly lower than the expected norm, and they're excluding eminently qualified Asian students. That's why people want to be in one of these alleged racially oppressed groups. It's indefensible, and we need to, this leftist ideology has inverted our understanding of real heroism and real victimhood. Here's another riddle. Riddle me this. How many how many Germans, Aryan blood, in Nazi Germany pretended to be Jewish during the Nazi reign, right? You got Germans. How many Germans pretended to be Jewish? What, so they could get into Berlin University under a diversity hire program or diversity admittance program? No. Jews were banned from university, well before Jews were being murdered, right? No, Germans did not pretend to be Jewish, but plenty of Jews pretended to be Germans. Why? Because they were actually being victimized. They were actually being victimized. When you see a parade of people pretending to be a member of some victim category, you know this thing is an absolute lie. And I'm not going to pretend that I buy into this lie. If you're gay, you're gay. I don't care. You're not a special victim category to me. And this is not to deny that gays did suffer abuse and discrimination. This is what the whole 1960s movement was about. And this was liberalism. This is liberalism. Martin Luther King, judge him by the content of his character, not the color of his skin. He wasn't asking for racial preferences. He wanted to be treated like the human being, the individual that he was. This leftist ideology, categorizing people in the terms of their race and gender, it's absolutely disgusting, and it's a fraudulent lie. It's a fraudulent lie. You know it when you see people who are non-binary or binary and pretending that they're non-binary, or they're white and they're pretending to be black, as Dolezal did, or Elizabeth Warren. She's not Native, pretending she is, and Elizabeth Warren, she's not Native, not even a little bit, pretending to be Native, right? Absolute lies. I'm not going to play that game, and it's demoralizing that you have real heroes, as I say, the police. When they leave that door and go to work, their spouses and their children do not know if they're coming back alive. And when the police the military deploy on foreign missions, defending the rights and freedoms of the free world, they're agents of imperialism. It's an oppressive, exploitative empire. No. And the truth is, after the fall of the Soviet Union, they could have imposed whatever tyrannical rule they chose to. They were standing unopposed, absolutely unopposed. They did not. Right? They ensured that global trade took place, that the standards of freedom were adhered to the best of their abilities. And it's an imperfect world. The United States has made mistakes, but they are moral exemplars. There has been no country, no dominant empire in the world that has exercised such restraint. And I use empire in the sense of overwhelming military dominance. No country has demonstrated such moral restraint and moral regard as the United States. And as much as I love Canada, oh yes, you will see, I take basically everything I can stitch an American flag onto, I throw an American flag. And around the world, people look to the United States as a beacon of hope. So this inversion of moral truth needs to be set aright. I thank you very much for your time and attention. I do hope you'll check out my book, Deconstructing Social Justice. It's available on Amazon. No, not important because I wrote it. I wrote it because the issues are important. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.